Live. This is Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to Law Call. I'm attorney Chris Young with the law firm of Perry & Young, and tonight we're talking all about injury. So if you have if you've been in an accident or have a question about an injury, feel free to give us a call. You can always email us at lawcall@WMBB.com, or you can always call us at 850-392-1544. Ted Howell's with me again tonight.
Yes,
Ted,
sir.
we've been pulling the late night shifts here pretty regularly, and so don't adjust your sets. It actually is a new show tonight.
Around the clock, we'll be here.
Yeah. So you taking your calls live. It's all about injuries. If you got a question, feel free to give us a call. We'll do our best to try to lead you in the right direction. But we're going to jump right into it. We do have an email question that came in moments ago, and I believe that is from Mike. Someone hit me and kept going. I had 3 passengers in my car who was injured. I have insurance. What are my options? Ted, that is a lot to digest.
And you know, I actually had somebody call me that it was a friend of a friend this week that had a similar situation, and so I know this has already happened to Mike, but just as a reminder, if this happens and the person flees the scene, you still need to call the police and make a report. It's important for your own insurance, because we'll talk about in a minute. Assuming you cannot figure out who this third party is that caused the accident, you still might have benefits under your own policy. We all have the no-fault benefits that are required of every resident of the state of Florida that will pay for at least $10,000 of your medical expenses, no matter what. Clearly here there's someone else in fault, but it would apply even if you had been at fault for the accident. But more importantly, if you cannot ascertain who that individual is, if you have a report and document there was actually an accident, then you can pursue potentially uninsured motorist coverage on your own policy if you can establish that there was someone else that is the cause of the accident.
So let's push pause right there, because there's a lot more in this question that we can get into. But Ted, just on the outset, you said if you have an accident report, you can prove that there was potentially an incident, but not always, because we've actually had cases where insurance companies don't believe that there's been a phantom vehicle.
And that's why it's important to have that. And in many policies, it's actually required that you document that there was an accident. That can be a point of contention.
So then you get into a he said, she said, and you look for paint transfer, you look for any type of evidence that can show witnesses there was another accident. Now, in this situation, you do have, I believe, 3 passengers in the car, so you got 4 people involved. And the odds are, if all 4 people can pretty much tell a similar story, because everybody sees a different view of the accident, it does help in triggering the policy, because an insurance company can always just deny it and say, look, you know, we don't believe that you're involved in an accident, and deny the claim outright.
And that's why it's important also to contact a law firm very quickly if you've been in a situation like that, because many times there is video footage that potentially from local businesses or other establishments, you know, even homes. Not everyone, but many people now have the Ring camera systems where we've seen things captured depending on where you are, or dash cameras from other drivers. So it's important. You may even be able to ascertain who that vehicle was and then pursue a claim against them if you can establish and prove that. But that information goes away very quickly. It is very time sensitive.
So let's move to the next step. Assuming that they can prove that an accident happened and we cannot establish who was who the other person was, what insurances do we have available?
Right, the most, we do have the no-fault benefits that we mentioned, potentially medical payment coverage on your policy as well. That is another health insurance type alternative. But the most important from a liability aspect will be that uninsured motorist coverage. And that's one that you need to check not only on your own policy, but also the policy of your passengers. You want to make sure that they look, because they can potentially have coverage. Unlikely that it would transfer to you, but they need to look at that for their own benefit. Yours very likely will transfer to them because they're occupying your vehicle. But you also want to check for your own benefit. If you are married or have blood relatives that live with you, you can potentially apply for their uninsured motorist coverage as well under what's called resident relative coverage. So it's important in a situation like this, it's important in many situations, but that you contact a law firm so that they can make sure and ascertain any and all avenues of recovery. You're in this situation, it's a bad situation, and you got to make the best out of it. You can only start making those steps forward with information. You don't have those tools until you get someone to help you with that.
So Ted, I know that every time we do an injury show, we harp on this, and it's extremely important. Call your agent, talk to your agent. If you have questions about your policy, you can always call us. It seems like every week someone that's watching the show actually calls us and asks us about their own insurance policy. But uninsured motorist coverage is paramount, and probably the most important thing that you can purchase on your own individual policy. And then they're going to ask you a question: do you want stacked or non-stacked coverage? They will try to, and I say they, the insurance company who's selling you this will try to persuade you to select the unstacked version because it's a little bit cheaper. But Ted, it's not that cheap.
No, and there's a lot of benefits that go with that stacked coverage. Not only will it potentially travel with you when you're in other vehicles, but it will also multiply your coverage based on the number of vehicles that you have. And this coverage is so important that if you're not going to have it, that agent actually has to have a form that you sign rejecting it.
Right.
And they have to sign that you rejected it even to get you out of stacking.
Right.
Because it's that important that you need to understand what you're doing and you need to make an educated decision. Many times people just sign away and they just do whatever is the cheapest, and that is not a good thing. Make sure you know what you're doing and make sure you know what you're getting.
We have great agents in the area.
Yes.
And call your agent, ask them the question, because by all means it's extremely important.
Yes.
I mean, it goes with you, and if you have children, it goes with those children. If they're in somebody else's car,
your spouse,
if they're at college, your spouse. So by all means, pull your policy out, get online, look at it, review it. If you got questions about it, and if you can't get any headway or any direction, give us a call. We'll be glad to get on the phone with you and walk you through your policy, and we can probably do it within 5 or 10 minutes.
No, I've done it many times, and it's very easy, and you know what you have. And look, there's always a cost benefit analysis, because many times people will call us, Chris, and they tell us they have full coverage, and I say, what, you have $1 billion in coverage?
Yeah.
I mean, there is no full coverage. Technically, just means you have the bare minimum requirements for the state of Florida. It's important to do an analysis of what your assets are, what your exposure are, and make sure what you have makes sense for you.
Now, Mike kind of asked the question, but he really didn't ask the question, because he said he has insurance and what are his options. We've talked about phantom vehicle, someone who caused the accident and fled, and you can't establish who that individual was. Now, in the state of Florida, we are considered a no-fault state.
Right.
And so no matter if the phantom vehicle is at fault or not, Mike's own insurance policy is going to start kicking in and paying benefits. And Ted, there's some important elements to that, some time restrictions that he has to comply with to get the full benefits. And also, you made a comment, hey, call a law firm that specializes in these things, because you could potentially be on the hook for a lot larger claims if you have health insurance and you have liens that come up and have subrogation. So let's walk through that just with the time period of the PIP.
Absolutely. With respect to the PIP no-fault benefits, our legislature has now made it where in order to seek the full avenue of the $10,000, you have to seek medical attention within the first 14 days after the accident. So it's important that you go and get checked out by a doctor during that time period. At a minimum, you just want to be safe versus sorry, and it also allows you to keep all those benefits at your disposal if you need them. I know that I personally have been in an accident, and I did not follow that advice. I did make my wife go, though, and fortunately she was okay. But you want to make sure that you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so we have people call us, and they'll call us on day 10, day 11, and we have to immediately tell them, you need to make sure if you're having issues, you need to go. Because
you will waive what's guaranteed $10,000 of medical treatment or lost wages. You're going to be knocked down to $2,500 at that point.
Right.
And those are benefits that you've already paid.
Almost immediately.
Right. And so on day 15, if you don't have what's called an emergency medical condition that's been diagnosed by a qualified medical provider, I should say, because there's different people that can actually give you that diagnosis, you preserve your benefits. Now, if you don't use them, you don't use them, Ted.
Right. And that's okay.
Lord willing, if you're okay, you're okay. But in the situation where we see it more likely than not, someone has prolonged injuries, they need to go back for other treatment, conservative treatment at the minimum, and they're going to blow through that $10,000 right away. Now, the PIP also pays for lost wages.
Up to 60% of your lost wages. You just have to document them, and you also need some medical documentation that you should be out of work as a result of the injuries.
But keep in mind, it's all $10,000. So you're either playing with $10,000 or you're playing with $2,500.
Right.
And then you get the medical payments that come in, and they start paying. And then sometimes we have what's called a med pay lien.
Yes, and that's, I wanted to touch on a point that you briefly kind of alluded to. You know, sometimes we'll have folks that are in a situation like this. Let's not take Mike, but someone where they know the at-fault party. Right. And that insurance company's calling them up almost immediately and saying, hey, well, why don't we just go ahead? You're doing okay. We'll go ahead and give you a check for $5,000. Well, they may think that's good. They may not be that bad off. But that individual doesn't realize that if their health insurance kicked in and paid something, that health insurance will have a lien. Right. And you will have to pay that back. And what that means, what I mean by a lien, is when a health insurance provider or even the medical payments provision of your policy, if they pay for your health benefits and ultimately it was a result of a motor vehicle accident, they have what's called a right of subrogation, which means that they get to be reimbursed if there is a settlement at the end of the day. And so out of that $5,000, you may end up paying that or more back to your health insurance, back to your own auto insurance if it's MedPay, if you have Medicare or Medicaid, to the federal or state government. So it's very, very, very important that you understand what you're doing before you sign a release and take a check.
And doing it without the help of an attorney.
It would be, you know, look, we work, as we often have said, we work on what's called a contingency fee basis, which means we only get paid if and when we make a recovery. Right. And so you're better to be safe than sorry, and make sure you know, because you don't know what you don't know. And when you sign that thing away, it's done. And if you have more treatment or if you have a lien that you owe, you're going to be stuck with it.
And Ted, a lot of times the providers who have the liens, who are trying to subrogate, they actually take into consideration you having to hire an attorney and offer certain type of discounts on top of that, because you've had to retain an attorney. So it can get we can go down a rabbit hole here and get even deeper on this conversation, but by all means, if you've been involved in an accident, call an attorney who specializes in personal injury practice. There's a lot that might seem simple on the outset, but when you kind of get into it, it's always best to have somebody fighting for you, because trust me, the insurance company always has somebody fighting for them, and they're not fighting for you in your best interest, even though it may be your own insurance policy. You can always email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. Our phone lines are open, 850-392-1544. We're going to take our first break of the evening. We'll be back in just a moment. back to Law Call. I got Ted Howell with me tonight.
Yes, sir.
And taking your phone calls live, 850-392-1544. You can always email us if you don't want to go on the air at lawcall@wmbb.com. I'm attorney Chris Young with the law firm of Perry & Young, and this is my law partner here. So taking your calls live. Yep. We have some individuals who have actually emailed us since the show began, and I believe we have Vanessa coming up. Vanessa, if we'll get her email question up here. Oh, it's phone call. I'm sorry. All right, Vanessa with a phone call. I'm sorry.
If you were hurt on your job and you went through a lawyer and the lawyer worked for the company that you got hurt for and supposed to be representing you, is there anything that you can do about it?
Well, you know, Ted, first off, there seems to be an obvious conflict of interest.
Right, and Vanessa, you always have the right to pick who your lawyer can be. And look, like I tell people all the time, just because they may be a good lawyer, it may not be the right lawyer for you. So you've already put up some signals that don't sound good. If they work for the company, there's a potential concern that there might not be the interest for you. So you definitely, I would highly recommend exploring your options and making sure you have somebody that you're comfortable with so that you can feel that you are being properly protected and properly served.
We know, Ted, you got to have full disclosure. There's no conflicts. Shame on the attorney for not providing that full disclosure, because that can actually be something that has to be taken up with the Florida bar, really. But what happens when this happens and they've already settled their case, and the attorney didn't disclose that actually he was doing work for the actual corporation of where she got hurt? You know, I think you can unwind that settlement.
That can be very, very problematic because it wasn't possibly not a knowing and voluntarily settlement when you don't have all the information and all the facts at your disposal. So that's not a situation you want to be in. It's not a situation that's good. You have the right, like I said, to hire whomever you want to. So please make sure that you do that and make sure that you have someone that you feel is properly protecting you. I mean, practicing medicine, practicing law are some very personal things, and you got to have somebody that you're comfortable with and that you feel like is taking care of you.
So Ted, but you know, you didn't harp on it. You mentioned it earlier before we went to our first break. We work on a contingency fee agreement, and I think that goes not maybe unappreciated sometimes.
Well, and sometimes we take it for granted because we talk about it all the time, and people may not understand and appreciate that. But many times when people are calling and asking for a lawyer, they're thinking there's going to be a retainer fee, there's going to be an hourly rate. How much is this going to cost me if I get you to help me with this? And the great thing about the area of personal injury law and the way we practice is that we do not get paid if and until we make a recovery at the end of the time. So that you're already in this bad situation where you've had this accident, you're not sure how you're going to pay your bills, how am I going to get this medical treatment, what if I have to miss time for work, and you have all this concern and you don't know what to do. And so the last thing you want to have to do is come out and write a check for an attorney to get started. And so the Florida bar has seen that. We have guidelines that govern that and dictate how that works. But even the cost that we incur in order to pursue the case, whether that be ordering medical records, filing fees, experts that we have to retain, unless and until we make a recovery, we're not owed anything. And anything is paid out of the settlement at the end of the case once it is resolved. What ultimately happens is we get a check, whether that be for a judgment collection or a settlement, and we have to prepare a trust disbursement statement, and we have to itemize out how those funds are going to be paid, what liens, we talked about that earlier, health care, Medicare, you name it, medical expenses that have to be paid back, the attorney fees and the cost, and then what you're going to net at the end of the day. And that's important that you understand that so that you know what you're getting into.
And so, our audience has, we probably need to talk more about it on every show, really, no matter what the show is because people need to know that they have an advocate out there ready to fight for them, like our law firm, and we're doing it with no money up front. We're all the burden is on us, all the risk is on us to win the case for our clients, because if we don't win at the end of the day, they don't owe us anything. So by all means, insurance companies, I've said it a million times, insurance companies always have somebody fighting for them, whether that name of that individual. From the word go. And you should have somebody fighting for you. So by all means, Vanessa, you may want to seek out an attorney if you have settled your case already, to look at your release. If you haven't settled your case already, Ted said it best, you always have the right to hire who you choose to represent you and make sure that you have the right attorney working for you. I believe we do have another caller on the line. Frank, go ahead with your call.
I had a wreck about a year and a half ago, and we're still waiting to hear from the insurance company and the lawyer. Every time we go down there, he needs more paperwork. And I was wondering, how long does it take to settle a case like that? Because she's getting the hospital bills, and everything.
You know, Frank, great question. We do get, it seems like we get that question asked every week. And it all depends basically on the client and the injuries that were sustained and the treatment that's going to be required to put that person back whole to where they were before the accident.
Right, because you can only settle that case once. Right.
And when you sign that release, you're done. So, you know, we've recently resolved some cases that at trial that have been going on for over 4 years, and to get it to trial because they're complex cases. And then we settle cases within 30 days. And it all depends on the injuries, what kind of parties are involved, and there's a few more dynamics that that come into play. So a year and a half is not unreasonable. However, what bothers me the most is that you're not getting constant communication from your attorney. And so that's something that we actually take a lot of pride in at our law firm, is that every client that we meet with from the word go, they actually get to meet with their attorney who's representing them. And it's paramount, and it's an office policy in all of our offices across the Panhandle, no matter who the attorney is, that you're going to stay in contact with your clients to make sure that they're not in a situation like Frank and they never feel like they don't have an attorney that they can reach to. So, you know, Ted, I would be embarrassed if that was us a year and a half and the individual, Frank, feels like that he's getting nowhere. And, you know, a simple meeting with your attorney, no matter how many times that you got to have that meeting, we go the extra mile and do those.
Right, and look, sometimes there's things that can be, you know, there's different factors that can come in there on the timing. But just so you know, Frank, the statute of limitations, depending on when this happened, the current statute of limitation is 2 years in Florida. If it's depending on how far back it goes, it could be 4 years. That
if it's been a year and a half for him, it's probably 4 years.
4 years for that one, but. You know, that's something you want to stay on top of. Make sure you know. A lot of it, we want to make sure your granddaughters, we don't like hearing, you know, for example, that you say she's getting bills. So you want to make sure those are getting processed through PIP, health insurance, and things of that nature, depending on what coverages she has. But make sure and have your granddaughter call and get an appointment set up with that attorney so they can get to the bottom of a game plan on how you're going to get across the finish line.
Phone line's still open, 850-392-1544. You can always email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. We're going to take our last break of the evening and be back in just a moment. Hi, welcome back to Law Call. I'm attorney Chris Young with my law partner Ted Howell. And Ted, we're in our last segment of the evening. We got about 3 minutes left. I think we're going to take a quick email from someone listed as concerned. If a pedestrian is hit by a car and they leave and can't be found, what can they do if they are badly injured? Concerned.
Well, that's very similar to our first email question. You know, if the person, you know, is a phantom vehicle and runs and goes away, you're dealing with the same set of facts and circumstances as we have in that first question. You know, we need to make sure if the pedestrian is badly hurt, I'm sure EMS is going to be called. It's going to be documented and reported. You need to have someone reach out and contact a law firm like ours very quickly so that they can capture any video cameras, get any witness statements available, because there's going to be very likely a criminal aspect to that as well. So you want to make sure that you're coordinating any efforts with those individuals so that you can get any information that they have as well. But you still have the same vehicles of potentially a liability claim if you can ascertain who that individual is. But in addition to that, when you're a pedestrian, you also will qualify for the benefits under your own automobile policy, assuming you do have coverage or that you live with someone that has coverage. You have the same PIP benefits, MedPay benefits that are on the policy, and even if you have uninsured motorists, that will also be triggered. So all of the same insurances are in play, even though you're a pedestrian.
Ted, a good summary of tonight's show would be if you've been involved in an accident, I know there's a lot that goes on,
yes,
and there's a lot that goes on that you don't even know that's going on that are triggering timelines. Mm-hmm. The best you can, contact an attorney right away. We can start working on your file immediately.
At no cost to you.
At no cost to you at this point, preserving all evidence that we may need, because we've had several cases year after year, month after month, week after week that come through our office to where we do some investigation and find the responsible parties and put and basically reconstruct the accident. So if you've been involved in an accident, get an attorney to represent you, to advocate for you. We've got a minute left, buddy. You want to do some quick shout outs?
Yes, I do. My daughter Vivian's team at World Class won the Worlds down in Orlando. We're first place. I think it was the first time her gym had ever done that. So very, very, very proud of her. And I also want to give a shout out to all the folks at Select Medical. I did this last weekend too, but they took care of my dad, Randy. We got him over at Encompass now. I'm sure they're going to do just as well over there.
They're going to love Randy there.
Yes,
so Randy, big shout out to you, buddy. Keep getting better. He wants to give a shout out to Judson, his son.
Yeah.
He wants to give a shout out to his wife. Nah, he's watching because I'm on the show. Anyways, giving a shout out to Ashley, my mom, boss man. He's snoring with her right now. He was snoring when I left earlier. Trey Smith, Judy Smith, Paula Frederick, Pam Myers, and Rick from the Marlin. Thank you guys for always watching us. Yep. Same time, same place next week.
Likely different.
Maybe different hosts and guests, but that's okay. If we're back on, we'd be glad to be here as well. So
that's right.
Anyways, have a safe week and see you next Sunday night.
Yep.